At the turn of the millennia, there was one name that came to mind when you thought about big role-playing games: Squaresoft. In the PlayStation 1 era, they established themselves as a force to be reckoned with, pumping out high-quality, massive games over and over again. Final Fantasy VII, 8, and 9, Chrono Cross, Parasite Eve, the list goes on. Needless to say, Squaresoft releases meant something. With the then upcoming release of the PlayStation 2, Squaresoft revealed they had 3 games in development. One was what would become Final Fantasy X, but their first game for the PlayStation 2 was something new. First shown in 1999, the then unnamed project people believed to be a sequel to Ehrgeiz, and that it would show off the PlayStation 2. It was later announced that this was something else entirely, and fans should expect a new and original IP. With the launch of the PlayStation 2 looming, the final product cut and changed many of the things shown in that trailer, implying a game rushed to the market in time to take advantage of the early days of the PlayStation 2. Despite this, the hype leading up to the game's release was huge. Press at the time was enthralled by the game's graphics and presentation. Squaresoft could do no wrong, and surely this game would follow suit. However, the Bouncer is a brawler, not a sprawling RPG epic. Squaresoft was shifting away from their wheelhouse and wanted to make an action movie you could play in order to show off the power of Sony's shiny new platform. Were they able to pull it off? Today we're dusting off the PlayStation 2 and seeing if the role-playing juggernaut had what it takes to make a brawler as brilliant as their classics. Could they do it? Let's find out. The first thing to really understand about the Bouncer is that more than anything else, the game's priority is to be an action movie. Squaresoft threw out the book on their PlayStation 1 titles and aimed to make a fast-paced action game where the story and action blended together seamlessly. This priority unfortunately does more harm than it does good. For a brawler, there, isn't much brawling. The main mode of the Bouncer is the story mode that lasts for about an hour and a half. However, at least an hour of that is cutscenes. I'm not even exaggerating. There are often times where you will watch 5 minutes of story unfold, and then you will end up in a gameplay section for about 20 seconds. Once the gameplay ends, you will go through a save sequence that takes about 30 seconds, and then another 5-minute cutscene will begin. I wouldn't mind this so much if the story being told was coherent and compelling. The story woven by the Bouncer is neither of these things. As the game opens, you're treated to some exposition about a corporation named Mikado unveiling some extremely questionable sounding technology to generate energy for the world. As this is happening, a girl named Dominique appears to get targeted for a kidnapping by modern ninjas who work for Mikado at a local bar named Fate. This bar is protected by 3 bouncers: Sion, Volt, and Ko. After the ninjas successfully escape with the girl, the 3 bouncers all decide to assault this giant corporation to get the girl back. What follows is the wildest night of their lives. I'm pretty sure by the time all is said and done, they murder a man in space and crash him into a satellite. All the while, our main character cries out, "Dominique!" over and over again.
Dominique? 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 Dominique!
It's all completely nonsensical, and written and delivered with all the care and wit of a rock. The game treats its story like some sort of epic tale of legends, in that it takes place in a world that has a rich and intricate backstory that you need to know to fully appreciate what they're trying to do. In order to build that backstory, they show you little snippets of dialogue from each character's past during some loading screens. But they're almost never on screen long enough to read, take in, or fully comprehend. Needless to say, the 3 heroes of our tale all have connections to the evil Mikado, and some sort of tragic backstory that you'll glean a hint of if you really pay attention. Sion, who I can only describe as a Wish.com Sora from Kingdom Hearts, used to train with someone from Mikado, but some sad things happened and he got real depressed about it. Volt, the burly biker with horns, used to work for Mikado, but left in a sea of burnt bridges and angry henchmen who want him dead after he was framed for someone's death. Ko is technically a spy for a rival family to Mikado. That family never actually appears in the game or is mentioned in any real meaningful way. In order to glean these little bits of information, you need to play the game start to finish 3 times. However, other than one small section in the middle, the game plays out exactly the same way each and every time. The only parts that change are small pieces of dialogue right before and after each combat section. Let me explain that. When you approach the rare moments you actually play in the bouncer, you are asked which of the 3 bouncers you want to play as. This will mildly adjust some of the dialogue, and the loading screens will be more focused on that character and their perspective and quirks. These changes are not significant, but sprinkle in hints of character development. So in order to fully experience the story, you must play through the game 3 times, which will result in you watching about an hour of nearly identical cutscenes 3 times, and playing the same 30 minutes of combat 3 times. It's not a very good value proposition. Because this is Squaresoft, they did add in a minor RPG element. When you land the final blow on an enemy, your character gains experience, which can be used to upgrade your character and buy new moves. However, if one of your AI companions lands the final blow, nobody gets the experience points, which is just terrible design. Combat aspires to be the next evolution in games like Final Fight and Streets of Rage, but thanks to an awkward use of the PlayStation 2's pressure-sensitive buttons for attacks, a clunky combo system that leaves almost every character with maybe one useful combo, and a hilarious physics system that sends you flying like a broken doll every time something touches you, the bouncer struggles to hold a candle to them. Those new moves you can purchase, then, are extremely useful, as they are often simple button inputs that result in singular, powerful strikes that brute force you through the combat's severe issues. For the most part, you will not be subjected to the combat for very long, and instead will simply be a viewer to the presentation, which some parts of still hold up today. It's hard to argue against the graphics, animation, or the art style. While it certainly looks dated today, it has aged much more gracefully than many of the games from 2000, and 22 years later, it does a shockingly good job of moving smoothly between movie and game. The audio part of the presentation does not deliver the same quality. While the bouncer has a small claim to fame in that it was one of the first video games to use 5.1 sound, the quality of that is poor at best.
Saw it in that horrible dream. This big ship splits into 2.
Poorly mixed cutscenes,
Jumping off as soon as we reach the station.
voice acting that leaves you cringing for all the wrong reasons.
This useless puppet? You're the one who created Dominique!
Even a decent soundtrack can't save it. If you can trudge your way through all of this and power up your characters, 2 more modes await you. The local multiplayer supports up to 4 players brawling using any of the characters from the game's cast, and this is probably where the bouncer works best. The clunkiness and awkwardness of the combat give way here to something that feels more lighthearted, over the top, and fun to just mess around with. And on the other side, there's a survival mode that fails to impress. Here you take any character that appears in the game and try to survive as many courses as possible until you reach the end. This mode assumes you actually enjoy the combat and think it's a deep system worth perfecting. The amount of characters you can drag into this is initially impressive, but on inspection it becomes a truly bizarre cast. Several of the characters are literally the same character in a different outfit. The final boss appears not once, not twice, but 3 times, and there's a secret 4th version of the final boss I haven't unlocked yet you can play as. When I step back after spending time with the bouncer, one thing becomes clear to me. While this was essentially a launch title for the PS2, what it truly was a tech demo for bigger and better things to come. Much like how Sion would become Sora, aspects of the game, its presentation, and mechanics would be a learning lesson for many of the big names at Squaresoft as the years wore on. While the game itself is frankly not good and not worth the time required to master it, as a historical oddity, the bouncer is certainly a fascinating piece. While it never left the PS2, if you have one and want to try it today, copies currently go for little more than $25. The bouncer failed to impress audiences in 2001 and fails to impress today. Squaresoft missed with its first punch of the PlayStation 2 era. While better days lay ahead, the bouncer is not one of those memories worth revisiting today.